Welcome, everybody, to Wharton Moneyball here on the Wharton Podcast Network. This is Eric Bradlow, professor of marketing, statistics, and data science here at the Wharton School. Today, I'm joined by my co-host, longtime friend and collaborator, Shane Jensen. Some combination of the two of us, Cade Massey and Adi Wyner, are here every week on Wharton Moneyball. Shane, I've always said the best part of our show, we know it's not the pay we get. We know it's not the glory, although I did tell you guys my story that I was at a winery in Oregon, and a guy came up to me and said, "You're the Wharton Moneyball guy." That was priceless, let me just tell you, Shane. But the real best part of our show is that we get to talk to people that are doing sports analytics, the intersection of the two, right in the field, the people that are living it, breathing it. And today, certainly a long-time guest of the show, someone who needs no introduction to our Wharton Moneyball audience, and that's Bill Connelly. Bill's going to talk to us today about lots of topics, tennis, college football, etc. But Bill, as always, welcome back to Wharton Moneyball.
Always fun. I'm just hoping that my dogs don't bark too much. They're trying to. I can never be too professional here. So,
well, we're informal here, as you know, on Wharton Moneyball. So, Bill, just so everybody knows, what's your actual title right now? Where can people follow you? Where can they see the content? Well, we know content from you is all over the place now, but if you could just tell our listeners your title, where to find your content, etc., that'd be great.
I think the title is pretty straight. It's just staff writer with ESPN.com. But yeah, obviously the intention there was mostly college football and remains mostly college football. But once I was kind of in the walls, they couldn't get rid of me, and suddenly I'm doing tennis and soccer and softball and a number of other things. So I always like doing that. It's like a palate cleanser, and I get more energy for college football when I'm doing other stuff too, I think.
Well, let's ask you, since, I think Cade Massey, one of our primary hosts, if you'd like, is going to be joining us in a little bit. And of course, there's no one that cares more about college football than the two of you guys. So I might hold off on that just for a second. I'm a huge tennis guy, as you know. We've just left a big part of the season. We're in a big tournament right now in Cincinnati. Obviously, we have the U.S. Open upcoming. I'm thrilled that I'm going to the U.S. Open again this year. What are you thinking about when you're thinking about tennis right now? Let's start with the men's side, and then we'll get to the women's side. It appears that it's going to be Sinner or Alcaraz winning the title. I don't know how it's not going to be one of the two of them, but how do you view? Let's start with men's professional tennis right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of underwhelming, honestly. And I say that, Sinner Alcaraz matches are phenomenal. Even at Wimbledon, where Sinner took control. I guess he kind of wobbled for a second early on, and then he took control. It kind of seemed like it was going to be pretty straightforward 4-set win. That was still just the points themselves are phenomenal when those two are going. It's just that this spring there was an opportunity for the men's tour to kind of to rise up a little bit. Sinner's out. Alcaraz was injured and wobbly, and there was a chance for somebody to kind of seize control, make this kind of a big three sort of thing, and just failed miserably. Alexander Zverev had a chance to move to number one and got upset at like 5 straight tournaments. And we've seen Taylor Fritz kind of max himself out. There's still hope that somebody like Jack Draper or Ben Shelton can have. It sure seems like they have a lot of upside, and maybe they can make things interesting. But I wrote it during Wimbledon that like the women's tour right now is more interesting than I think I've ever seen it. Just the number of different personalities and really, really high caliber players. Men's tour, we lost our big three, and we thought it was going to be wide open, and instead it was a big two that emerged instead.
Well, let me ask you, before I move away from just the big two, I want to talk about a few other players. Who do you think has the max of the two players? Because I've always had the perception, first, you could comment on this too. I always thought on their best day, Djokovic was not the best. Mm-hmm. I never thought that. I just didn't.
Yeah.
But over 15 years, they're not going to have their best day. And he's definitely the max min because he was great on every day. But if Federer was at the top of his game, if Nadal was at the top of the game, look, I saw Stan Wawrinka blow away Djokovic. I saw Andy Murray blow away Djokovic. I never thought he had the highest peak performance, but over 15 years, he's clearly the most accomplished tennis player. How do you feel about, you could talk about those three, and or how do you feel about Sinner and Alcaraz?
Yeah, I mean, it is a ceilings versus floors thing here. I feel like I make that reference far too much on the college football side, and I'm going to when we talk about college football. But no, I mean, Djokovic, his ability to defend and grind and just wear people down gave him the highest floor we've ever seen. Like we knew his level was going to hit a certain mark. But Nadal and Federer, especially, Federer didn't have a great record. I guess their age difference was pretty significant, but Federer's upside was remarkable. And I do think that what we see with Alcaraz and Sinner now, like Sinner just playing a neutral point, like if he's just hitting the ball with somebody and just kind of messing around, half focused, every ball he's going to hit is going to be within about 2 feet of the baseline. He hits everything with just incredible depth. It's kind of like he accidentally hits winners sometimes because it's just so easy. And his natural game is just pretty remarkable. But Alcaraz, what we saw in the French Open final against Sinner, where Sinner found a certain level and didn't really blow a 2-set lead. Alcaraz just came back and took it, and especially late, it felt like Sinner in that last tiebreaker didn't really, every point that he lost, he hit at least one remarkable shot, and Alcaraz won all those points anyway. So I think that is really what we're dealing with, is when Alcaraz, I think he's got about the highest ceiling we've ever seen. But Sinner's floor might be, peak Djokovic at some point as well. Like he defends well, he moves well. It feels like he has to take about a step and a half to reach one end of the court and the other, and you just can't get anything by him. And it's really incredible to watch. I didn't really always enjoy the kind of suffer ball matches that Djokovic and Murray played. And it feels like Sinner is kind of a natural suffer ball guy, but he's just got such natural offense too, that he's still really entertaining.
But let's also remember how many match points Sinner had at the French. Sinner's 1 point away from holding all 4 Grand Slams right now. So as much as we want to say Djokovic's ceiling is higher, and Alcaraz's ceiling is higher, and I happen to agree with you, Sinner is 1 point away from having the Sinner Slam.
Yeah, it looked like we were kind of in a situation where it was going to be Sinner on hard courts and Alcaraz on the natural courts. But then Sinner beat him at Wimbledon pretty comfortably. And like you said, had match point, had championship point in Paris as well. So he's pretty ridiculous. And I do hope, for the sake of the men's game, I do think Draper and Shelton in particular are I don't know if they're the most likely, but I think that'd be Shelton, especially with his personality, that'd be a really fun addition if he can find another level. But right now he can beat pretty much anybody in the game except Alcaraz and Sinner. So he's kind of stuck there. I don't know how he makes up that difference.
Yeah, I said this on the show a couple weeks ago after Sinner had won, that I think that changed the trajectory of men's tennis for those two. And the reason I say that is, had Alcaraz won Wimbledon, he would have been up 6 majors to 3.
Yeah.
He would have a 9-4 record against, at that time, he would have had a 9-4 record, including beating him the last 5 times had he won that match. So that match really leveled the playing field, especially given it was at Wimbledon. He was the 2-time defending champ. I thought that match was crucial in their rivalry going forward. I don't know how you saw it from a, let's call it, historical perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I was pretty comfortable thinking that Sinner was the better overall player, but one of the fun things about this rivalry right now is that the lower ranked player usually wins. Sinner was he kind of broke that streak as well at Wimbledon. So I am hoping that they kind of just figure out ways to top each other. That's how the big three really became what they did, was they had to figure out how to, Nadal was kind of built to beat Federer, and then Federer had to fill a couple holes in his game, got back on top of Nadal late in their rivalry. That made it a lot of fun. So hopefully Alcaraz can generate whatever he needs to make sure that Sinner doesn't pull away. But if somebody's going to pull away right now, it's going to be Sinner. He's remarkably consistent.
I agree with that. You had mentioned the diversity or the diffusion of talent in the women's game. Yeah. I think you and I both agree on possibly every given point, on any given match, Sabalenka is the most talented player. However, I'm not saying only, but she only has 3 Grand Slams.
Yeah.
Let's not make it seem like she's got 10. I mean, Swiatek, I think, has 6 now. Yeah. I think 4 French, a U.S. Open, and a Wimbledon. And, she's clearly the most accomplished player, I think if Sabalenka plays her best, she beats Swiatek. I think. I'm not sure of that. But look, there's Coco Gauff, who's a major champion. Madison Keys just recently won a major championship. There's Rybakina, who's won a championship recently. Vondrousova won a championship recently. On the women's side, I think there's some streak going on. You may remember this, Bill. Something like 9 or 10 different winners, like out of some number of tournaments. It's like there's not even been a much of a repeat champion on the women's side. So how do you see that?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. Anytime you start talking about the women's game, as you know, it's best of 3, so it is a little more random than the men's in the slams. And really, you can see whatever you want to see. If you want to say like there's no standout, I know Muratoglu, Osaka's coach, had a ridiculous line about how I just don't see any elite players right now. Like, are you freaking kidding me? Like right now we have at least 3 Hall of Famers at the top of the sport. Like Sabalenka has certainly blown some matches. But she's there in every single, what is it, like
It's 10 or 11 straight, at least.
Yeah, it's like 10 of 11 semis and like 11 straight quarters or something like that. She's always there. Swiatek has, until she lost to Sabalenka in the French Open, she was on the Rafa Nadal pace in terms of French Open titles at a certain age. Coco Gauff has she turned 20? She's not 22 yet. She has 2 slams already, and usually two gets you in. So if she quits tomorrow, she might be a Hall of Famer. I don't think she's going to quit tomorrow. But if you accept that, okay, if you're in the Hall of Fame, that probably means you were awesome. Then look at all the players who have beaten Sabalenka, Swiatek, and Gauff of late. Like Swiatek still can't ever beat Yelena Ostapenko, and Ostapenko's just a one-note hit everything as hard as you can player.
Who's got a major?
She does. And it's really fun. I'm always rooting for her to make a run because she's just so fun to watch. But then, Rybakina has landed a lot of shots against Sabalenka and Swiatek, and Gauff struggled against Navarro last year. And you start to tie this all together, and you start to realize like there are 20 players. Like we have 3 Hall of Famers at the top, and like 20 players in a given tournament could win that tournament just based on the randomness of best of 3 and just the fact that they have upside.
Who just won. Mboko just won the Toronto, or I forget if it was Toronto or Montreal. Montreal. And she beat like 4 top 20 players.
Yeah, she was unbelievable in that tournament. And she crushes everything she touches and beat a couple players who took the first step from her. She just continued to land body blow after body blow, and they started to break down. I thought, Osaka certainly looked like she was in the clear to finally kind of make her big breakthrough after in this last year and a half since she came back from maternity leave. And then Mboko wore her down physically and then emotionally. Like the number of players who are really interesting. I just, when a slam starts, I find myself like having Sinner Alcaraz at the end is fun, but I find myself for the first week and a half of a given slam paying far more attention to the women's side than the men's, because starting at about the second round, you have some wildly impressive matchups on the women's side. It's a really, really fun tour to follow. Lots of different personalities, shapes, sizes, ages. You got like 3 different generations that are all producing top 5 level play right now. And it's just a lot of fun. And I do kind of worry about the men's side. Obviously lots of great athletes and fun games on the men's side too, but you do kind of know who's going to win in the end, especially with slams. And right now,
the challenge also is, remember, this happened with the big 3 for so long, is that you're going to have to beat probably Sinner and Alcaraz to win a slam. So that's, and with the big 3, it was at least 2 of them, and that's the challenge. Like, can someone beat Alcaraz on a given day? Probably more so than Sinner. Yeah. But then you have Sinner waiting for you in the final. Right. So that's the challenge.
Yeah, and that's kind of immediately where you look anytime a draw comes out. Like if we're going to have any sort of person with any sort of chance, like who's not on the side of Sinner, Djokovic still, and Alcaraz, like whoever is in that other quarter, maybe they get lucky. Maybe, Alcaraz gets distracted by clouds for too long and accidentally loses or something. But it's great to have that at the end. But the women's tour is just an absolute blast right now. I think our college football person just entered the chat.
Well, before we move on to college football, one last question about tennis. How do you think, you just made the comment that some people have said there's no greats in the game today on the women's side.
Yeah.
How do you think about, because we've talked about this, Shane knows, we've talked about this, comparing eras in sports. As someone that writes for ESPN, but someone I think that has not a historical knowledge of tennis, or you could even think about it for college football. Like, last year's Ohio State team did not play Alabama of 2009. They didn't play, they just didn't play each other. How do you think about comparing today's women's players with, obviously, the person's pining, whoever this is, pining for the Serena Williams days, or, the Martina Navratilova and Chris Everett days? Well, all right, but, Swiatek isn't playing them. So how do you think about comparing different eras in sports?
Yeah, I mean, I saw Serena lose to a lot of pretty mediocre players. Like she showed up more often than obviously anybody ever has on the women's side, and when her best was probably as good as we've ever seen. But I mean, she was still vulnerable to upsets at times. So I don't really. It does feel like the whole nostalgia thing and everything was always better in the past really rears its head with tennis, and especially women's tennis. But like Lindsay Davenport, Serena Williams, Venus, all these players were incredible and also lost a lot because best of three is really hard. So that's I think the depth of talent and athleticism and really kind of diversity on the women's tour is as high as I can remember it. At least going back to, maybe in the mid 2000s when you had kind of peak Serena or near peak Serena and Venus and Davenport and Mauresmo, and you still had Hennen and Kleisters. Like maybe that was deeper, but this is at least the best I think we've seen in 20 years.
Well, Shane, you wanted to jump in, please.
Yeah, Bill, you're kind of talking about sort of like, like his rankings and kind of, them over time. Eric, when he asked the question, brought up both tennis and also just kind of, I think we're going to transition to college football. This might be a good kind of way to do that. Can you comment maybe on like how much, like if you said something like an ELO ranking or person, like a sport where it's a player specific sport, like an individual specific sport, and how how consistent that kind of player ranking or how slowly that evolves over time versus like, team based rankings in say college football year to year. You could probably use some kind of ELO model for that too, but it might be a lot less consistent or maybe more. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I do lean a lot on the tennis abstract numbers. That's an incredible site, and that's kind of how at the start of every tournament, especially every slam, I always take a big look at the abstract odds. And I was just looking, I already had it pulled up when you started talking. So like of the in Jeff Sackman's ELO rankings, there, the top 14 players on the women's tour, 5 of them have had their peak rating in 2025. So you've got a lot of those, but then you got 5 more who are in 2024. Madison Keys peaked in 2016. Svitolina peaked in 2018. It really is kind of a broad range of players who have been really, really solid for a long time, and then also players who are peaking now. And I don't know, like it's really fun to just look at the list and see, an 18-year-old Mboko really close in the ratings to a nearly 31-year-old Svitolina. Just a lot of different generations bringing a really high level. And I'm pretty sure if I looked at the men's tour right now, it'd be kind of be a lot of people who's peaked in 2025, but their peaks aren't very big right now.
Well, we'd spent a good amount of time on tennis. It's good to get your thoughts, Bill, on both the previous tournaments and, of course, the upcoming U.S. Open. But even more importantly, our friend, colleague, and primary host, Cade Massey, joined, the face of college football, certainly of Wharton Moneyball, if not broader. So I'm glad that Cade's here to start our discussion of college football.
Thanks, Eric. Apologies, guys. Of all the weeks to have technological issues, my gosh, this is my favorite week of the year. Little college football preview. We get Godfrey here in the next week or two. So we're going to split the old Connelly-Godfrey partnership as our preview. But we get Bill C. I'm always excited to talk to Bill C., but especially this time of year, my God. Bill, how are you? How are you feeling? What are you excited about?
I'm always curious when it's going to hit me
football.
that I'm ready for the season. Because usually, everybody starts ramping. Like I've been talking about it for months, and then everybody starts ramping up in media days. I'm like, man, I'm not ready. I need a little more time here.
That's humbling to the rest of us because you're writing like conference previews in February.
Well, I can't anymore because the rosters all completely flip in May. But no, like I finished my my big conference previews, which because conferences are so big, those previews are now like 10,000 words per conference. But yeah, finish those in July, and then I go through kind of my, I have my annual pieces like the ifs list and the most important players and all this that are basically designed to get me ready. People seem to like them, but really I write them for me just so I can get everything lined up in my head. And I think I'm there. Between those pieces, and I just finalized the last SP Plus rankings to be released, I think on Thursday. And laying out a couple pieces here coming up. I took my first dive into the small school universe. I know when all the big games are for like, D2 and NAIA and whatnot. So I think some point either today or yesterday it clicked. I'm ready. We're good to go here.
Okay. Well, I'm glad to hear it. But I also, this is a different season for you because you've got a big book launching. I went to get the book and I was mad because the book's not available until September 2, I think.
I mean, I can send you a PDF just for the record. Like, I think you get special privileges here if you want them.
I'm ready. Send it. I'm ready.
Cade wants you to Xerox it and scan it if you could.
Godfrey said the same thing. Like, if you send me a PDF, I'm just going to go to Kinko's and print it, which, God.
Well, tell us something about the book, and I've got some questions about the season. Let's do your book real quick. What is the book? What's the gist of the book? Why the book now? And I won't even ooh and ah over the fact that you wrote this book while you do everything else you do. I don't know how you write all you do, but tell us about the book. September 2 available. What's it called?
Forward Progress, the definitive guide to the future of college football. Now, I love the title. Also, it's a whole bunch of me going, I don't know. So I don't know how definitive it really is, but that's just the odds brain in me. I can never actually say anything with certainty. It's basically, how do we get here? Where are we going? But it's half history book, half what ended up being like a manifesto of where I think things should go or what the actual worry signs are. Because in college football, especially with every sport really, but in college football especially, anything we don't like, any change we don't like, we think it's going to kill college football. But you can't find a single thing right now that suggests that there's any, like, ratings are great, attendance is good. Like, it seems like things are pretty healthy, but the inequality behind the scenes has me very concerned at the moment because I think that's only going to get worse. And I just wanted to kind of separate things out. Like, so much has changed so quickly that we just kind of think of it as a giant monolith of change. But, I can tell you that, some of the conference realignment things are bad, but some of the paying players things are very good. And some of the, play arguing about like the expansion of the playoff is good, but this is bad, but this is good. And I just kind of wanted this, again, I write for myself, basically. I wanted to clear my own head, and I think it worked pretty well.
Okay. You some people don't know this about you, but you really are a college football historian in addition to being an analyst and a writer. Often when we're trying to make sense of current events, it helps to have that long view, that historical view. Often we think that people are forgetting something about the past that still informs today, but it does feel like maybe college football is substantively different now. Maybe the past is less relevant now. So my question to you as the historian is like, can you play that history card now and say, well, this is how it used to be. Don't overreact. Or we've seen this stuff before, it's no big deal. Or are you like, no, this is so categorically different that it's a break from the past?
Well, I mean, the biggest difference is after we were arguing about, a playoff for 50 years, we were arguing about this breakaway, like the biggest schools getting what they wanted and breaking away for 50 years. We've been arguing about all these things forever, but yeah, in the 2020s, these things actually happened. So that alone makes it different. No question about that. I did think, there's always things to learn from history about, how loyalty has never been a thing. Like Washington leaving Washington State isn't really a surprise because they tried to in the 50s and just didn't succeed. But now that geography is officially not a thing anymore, they were able to actually finally break apart. But, I think there's certainly what I also tried to do was learn from other sports. How did NASCAR fall from grace? What are some of the lessons we can learn there? Because I think that one, I know a lot of people have made that comparison, but I do think it's a pretty legit one when it comes to taking your base fans for granted in the search for casual fans. And if there's any sort of crisis and suddenly the casuals go away, maybe you'll find out the hardcores did too, things like that, just kind of warning signs to look out for. I'm always a very competitive, balance driven person. I like parity or more than I get, which is crazy that I'm a college football person. In general, but I took it. I talked to somebody who talks a lot about Australian rules, who writes about Australian rules football, because Australia does parity. Australia is obsessed with parity. So just kind of, I tried to take from other sports and learn what we could learn to see what I found.
That's a really intriguing, Bill. Just because I think parity is something that I think we agree all is a notion we want for every sport. But I feel like it's a very hard thing to compare kind of across sports. What parity in American football would mean compared to parity in hockey or baseball or again, at the individual player level, tennis we were talking about earlier. I don't know if you can kind of talk about like how hard it is to bridge sports, like how much can you learn from one sport struggle with parity or I guess implementation or attempts at parity versus, for another sport.
Yeah, in Australia, this isn't necessarily Australian rules football, but with rugby and some of the lower level Aussie rules football, they basically, they don't have a salary cap. They have a player rating system, I think is what it's called, or player point system, where basically like the quality of the player costs more. Like if you want a former Australian rules, a high level pro for your like mid-level, like semi-pro Australian rules football team, then he's going to cost a lot of points. You can pay him whatever you want, but you're not going to be able to get that many other good players, because they're obsessed with roster balance. And so it was just kind of a fun exercise. I mean, I think we know in the short term where things are headed, and they're not even though we have recruiting rankings and we could try to assign you can only sign so many 5-star guys limit. If we wanted to do that, I'm good with it. I doubt it happens. But at some point, when the SEC and Big Ten are kind of done with their bloodlust here in the short term, we might find that there are some problems emerging and we need to have some other ideas. So that was kind of the goal here.
Bill, since we're obviously a statistics show as well, I thought I'll throw in some statistics jargon, but to ask you a substantive college football question. If you look at the last 15, 20 years, it appears that there's been, I'll call it state dependent or runs by conference in the national title. Like we looked at, the SEC will never be beat. LSU, Bama, Georgia. Well, the last two have been won by Michigan and Ohio State.
Yeah.
So do you see a first of all, do you believe in conference level strength and state dependence where conferences kind of go on runs, or not really? And B, if the answer to the first one is yes, do you think we're in a Big Ten run right now and we might see that for the next couple of years?
No, I really don't. I mean, I think what I told SEC people when SEC teams were winning a lot of titles is the same thing I'm telling Big Ten people now. Like, the best conference is the best conference. We have power ratings. We have a lot of ways to evaluate who has the best conference, but who won the last game of the season probably isn't the best way to do that. Alabama won a lot of those national titles. That didn't have anything to do with Vanderbilt. Like the SEC, they can claim that they're part of the best conference or whatever because Alabama won all those titles. That's not really a great thing. But I do think, right now, like on a year-to-year basis, the SEC grades out comfortably the best on average, just in terms of average SP plus rating or whatever. But heading into this season, especially, that doesn't, the SEC might be the best overall because it doesn't have as many terrible teams. That doesn't really mean that Ohio State and Penn State don't have a really good chance of winning the national title this year. It just means they're going to have a lot of light heavyweight and heavyweight teams with a decent chance.
Well, also to your point, Bill, just to follow up one last thing, the new college football playoff system will also help that, because now one loss by an Ohio State or Penn State, well, you're still in the playoffs. They'll still have an opportunity to win it.
Right. And also, it's a genuine tournament. The 14 playoff was great. It was an improvement in my eyes, but it still wasn't really, it was one extra game. It wasn't like a complete change. Now we have a tournament at the end of the season, and tournaments have a lot of randomness that you can't say if, the 8 seed makes a run at some point, whoever that might be. Let's say LSU makes a run and wins the title kind of unexpectedly. Actually, Ohio State, what were they? They were pretty close to the 8 seed last year. They were the 8 seed last year.
Yep.
even though they clearly weren't the 8th best team. But yeah, you have a team that loses 3 games but sneaks in, makes a run. That doesn't mean their conference was best. It just means they got hot at the right time. So.
All right, guys, let's continue down this line and talk about this season. And we got a little bit of a late start, so why don't we do this?
I don't know if I'm capable of short
fashion.
answers, but let's go. Let's try.
And well, we're going to challenge you, Bill. I don't know if my colleagues are capable of short kibitzing, but we're going to ask them to be brief kibitzers as well. And this is going to give us a chance to talk about a lot of teams and conferences. But I've got eight, just so you know, 8 lightning round questions for you. And let's try to keep it concise. But if we need to dive, we can dive. Number 1, yesterday, AP poll was released. Texas is number 1. First time in the history of the poll, which is shocking to most people. 75 years, Texas has never been number 1 before. Number 2 is PSU, but Penn State only like 5 votes behind, or not even full votes. I mean, it was really neck and neck. If you had to bet on one of those 2 teams winning the national championship, Texas or Penn State?
I think Penn State, just because A, they have an easier schedule and they're more likely to get there, and B, they have more known quantities. Texas, like if Arch Manning's the best player in the country, Texas is number 1. That's fine. Like I don't really dispute that. But it kind of takes an assumption that Texas is that Arch is the best player in the country if Texas is going to be number 1. They have 2 brand new lines. They have a receiving core I don't really trust. I'm not sure if Texas's coaches do either. Like they got a lot of questions, and if Arch is anything less than amazing, there are some issues there. This is not a short answer, obviously. But just there is a point that I've been making a lot that I really find interesting. We have 2 kind of known birds in hand here with Penn State and Clemson. And then we have a whole bunch of teams that probably have more upside and a whole bunch of unknowns. And that makes it a really, really interesting year to talk about.
Well, interesting you bring that up, because another pairing I want to give you, national championship chances. Who do you got? Clemson or Alabama?
Alabama. I don't trust Clemson as a top 5 team. This has been my point all off season. Like their last 4 years, they've averaged like an 18.5 ranking in SP plus. Like they have the most returning production in the country. This is going to be their best team in 5 years. I just don't trust that that's a top 5 team. It might only be like a top 10 team.
Wow. Okay. And Alabama, you clearly think there's some upside there. That's kind of a sneaky, strong team this year, right?
Yeah, great defense last year, even aside from basically like 45 minutes against Georgia and Vanderbilt. And like the quarterback marriage just wasn't a good one, never was. Defenses figured it out late last season. I don't know if Ty Simpson is good, not even like Heisman, just good. That's a really, really, really good football team.
But Bill, let me just ask you quickly about, just to follow up Cade's question. What concerns you about Clemson that, I'm just staring at it right now. They're number 4 in the AP. They're number 6 in the Clemson in the coaches poll, and you've just commented that you're not sure they're even really top 10. What do you see that might not be included in these votes or these models, et cetera?
Well, recent history more than anything. They've been, 8. They haven't been a top 15 team in SP Plus since 2020. So they're projected to improve a lot because of the returning production, but that only gets you so high. They haven't had an elite offense in years. They haven't had an elite defense in years. And we're just kind of to project or to vote for them in the top 5 means you just kind of assume all these things are going to come together at once. And that can happen. And again, like I'm not rooting against it by any means. I think it'd be pretty interesting if they did rise back. I don't trust it. I don't see it yet.
All right, so I've got 8 of these lightning round questions. The first 4 are these head-to-head matchups. Who's best for the national championship? We're on number 3. And now I'm going to go to 2 tried and true. No question they're capable. Who do you have between Ohio State and Georgia?
Ohio State.
Who's more likely to win the national championship? Ohio State. All right, why is that?
Well, they have the 2 best players in college football. That's a good place to start. There's a lot of uncertainty there, like 2 new coordinators, a very young quarterback. Like I don't think they're going to be number 1 in SP plus, spoiler, but I don't love that. I don't think they're far and away number 1 by any means, but they just have the most upside. Georgia's really funny this year. I think they always have, speaking of ceilings and floors, they always have a ridiculously high floor. They only lose to awesome teams. And also, what are they elite at this year? We don't know that they're elite at anything this year. Their quarterback's new. Their skill core wasn't good enough last year. Their offensive line wasn't good enough. Their defensive line came and went and then lost everybody. I know people love Kristen Miller, defensive tackle. Like, there's obviously upside there. We just haven't seen any of it. Like, we don't know that they're going to be elite at anything. So give me the team that I know has at least a couple of really, really, really good pieces.
Okay, two I wanted to hear you talk about, so I'll just put them against each other. Oregon and Notre Dame. Oregon and Notre Dame.
I guess Notre Dame. Oregon lost a lot. I didn't realize until I wrote the Big Ten preview just how much Oregon lost from last season. That offense is brand new. Dante Moore is the likely quarterback, and his upside. All we know is he kind of bombed at UCLA 2 years ago as a true freshman, which happens. But I went back and read his scouting reports from when he was a recruit, and he was a 5-star recruit, and all the scouting reports were basically like, doesn't make mistakes, makes the right decisions. It doesn't really say anything about his physical upside. And I mean, I guess if you're succeeding Dylan Gabriel, then maybe that's right. Gabriel didn't have a lot of physical upside, but just was a really good quarterback. So maybe that works out okay. But I had a lot more questions about Oregon than I realized. And Notre Dame, obviously, they have a new quarterback too. Mm-hmm. So some of these new quarterbacks are kind of bomb or not, at least not be superstars. But I like a lot of what Notre Dame returns otherwise.
Okay, let's go to the final four lightning round questions away from the head-to-heads. Will Texas Tech make the Big 12 title game?
Well, I'm going to say no, just because it's like 16 teams and they all have exactly the same chance in that stupid conference. It's my favorite conference by far because just flip the standings from year to year. They are going to be good, though. The biggest issue with them is, I think they're projected to improve as much as just about anybody in SP+, but they started in the 40s because they were super lucky last season. They shouldn't have probably won as many games as they did, and they didn't win a ton of games. So they got a lot to prove, and I don't really trust. There are a lot of good quarterbacks in that conference, and Baron Morton, I don't trust him as much as I trust some others. So I was gonna say no to anybody you said in the Big 12, but I'm definitely gonna say no to the Texas Tech.
Okay, so they're a little short. They acquired more talent than anybody, and they paid as much as we've seen anybody pay. What's your position in general on whether you can build teams that way? It's like, to what extent is the whole greater than the sum of the parts, or less than the sum of the parts? It's different from the sum of the parts.
Well, I tend to root for usurpers, so I'm not, even though I don't like the impact money plays in a lot of ways, there's a lot of old money in college football that has driven decisions and for a very long time. So anybody trying to upend that, I'm not going to really complain. I do think I think it would be very interesting to see how certain powerful entities responded if Texas Tech really did basically buy a bunch of 5-stars and suddenly have an elite team and, beat a couple of blue blood schools. I think that'd be probably in the end pretty good for the sport, but it'd be interesting. I don't think it'll happen, but it'd be interesting.
Right.
Bill, maybe to tie our first conversation with you about tennis to this, is the current college football season to you more like men's tennis or women's tennis? Do we have basically 2 teams that can win it, or do you see 10 to 12 teams? Here's the thing. I'll ask you in a different way, but the same question. Bill Connelly gets to pick X teams. I get the rest of the teams, and you're going to make it a fair bet. How many teams is Bill Connelly picking?
Well, that's historically you're looking at like 3 or 4. We had the Alabama run, we had the Georgia run right after the Alabama run. Like, didn't take much, and I think it's unquestionable that at the top of the sport right now, the talent's been a little more spread out. Like, I see probably at least, I think the top 6 or 7 are in a tier by themselves. About 6 or 7. That's already 6 or 7 that I can't really decide between. And all of them have pretty big question marks, either in terms of ceiling or floor. Like, I realized, somebody asked me, is Texas really number 1? Are they overrated? And I realized I was going to say whoever was number 1 was overrated, because it feels like we have a bunch of 3s and 4s. And that's great. I think that's, that makes for a really, really fun title race. When I talk about competitive balance that I'm worried about, it's the power conferences, are really the 2 conferences trying to distance themselves from everybody else. But there's no question that, if we have a 12-team tournament at the end of this, like right now, I would say I would need at least like 6 to feel comfortable that I have the winner.
Let me ask you a related question to that. Do you think there's enough data that when we have you on at the end of the season, so let's say the 12-team bracket is now set.
Yeah.
And I say to you, Bill, how many teams can win this? Do you think the data from the regular season will differentiate them enough because of the number really high leverage games each team plays? Or are we going to say, Bill's going to say, didn't I tell you guys on August the 12th that there's still a half a dozen teams that can really win this thing?
Well, I think wherever we draw that line, 6 teams, 7, 8 teams, whatever, half of them are going to turn out to have awesome quarterbacks. So I do think at the end of the season, we'll know which ones are awesome, and that'll make the decision a little bit easier. But that's what has made talking about this season pretty fun, is that so many of them have new quarterbacks, and they're inevitably high upside guys. But number one, most of them run around too much and get hit a lot, and some of them aren't. That's not going to work out very well. So, yeah, by the end of the year, we're going to know who the elite quarterbacks are, and that'll make the decision a little easier, I think.
But I do think that the short answer to Eric's question is that this is the most women's tennis-ish college football seasons we've had in a long time, in a real long time. And well, I think it's intriguing to think about your second question, to wonder to what extent will it still feel that way at the end of the year, but I bet it does. My money says that it will. Okay, 3 final questions. First 2 are coaches. Who has a better chance of getting their program back to the glory days? Lincoln Riley or Brent Venables?
Well, neither is probably the right answer, but I guess Venables, if only because he did get the defense back on track last year, and this whole gambit where you just kind of transplant, in this case, bringing in Washington State's offensive coordinator and quarterback, assuming nothing becomes of this gambling thing that just popped up about John Mateer, which we'll see. That's in the early stages. Maybe it wouldn't be hard to envision that offense clicking and then suddenly having a top 10 or 15 team again. Lincoln Riley is really funny. In my Big Ten preview, I wrote, like, if you just kind of look at what he did, he redshirted a ton of guys last year. He didn't make a panic buy with a quarterback in the portal this year. And he's signing a great recruiting class for next year, or not signing, but he has a bunch of really good commitments. Kind of feels like he's building for 2026. And I don't know if the marriage there is going to be healthy enough in 2026 for him to still, it wouldn't surprise me if he kind of left via kind of mutual consent after this year, if it's another 7 and 6 years. So yeah, I right now I trust Venables more, but I don't really trust either one.
All right. Reasonable. Second coaching question. 7th out of the 8 lightning round questions. Will Brian Kelly ever win a national championship at LSU?
I mean, sure, possibly, but probably not. No. It really, every year though we talk, it's so easy to talk yourself into LSU because inevitably they had a good offense last year, and this year they're gonna, Nussmeier's a very solid quarterback. They're gonna have good receivers and all that. And the defense always has athletes. He has 2 dynamic linebackers, both coming off big injuries, so we'll see. And then he went out and got like every defensive end of the portal. So it could click. They're not that far away, but at this point, it's kind of up to him to prove it. He's been given the benefit of the doubt a lot, I think.
I'm gonna make it a little bit harder and ask what probability, because he'll run out of time at some point. LSU is not known for patience with their head coaches, and as Feldman is always saying, the last 3 coaches there won national championships. So what probability?
Not great, because even if they peak, you still have to deal with Ohio State. You still have to deal with you have to beat like 3 out of Ohio State, a couple, whichever elite SEC teams, and just a whole bunch. Like, you're gonna have to win 3 really hard games at the end of the year, and I just don't think we're gonna say. We'll say 12%.
Okay. Okay. So I think I know how you're going to answer this last question, because you've been giving this statistically wise answer to all these questions. You're forced to bet against the line on Texas, Ohio State, week 1. The line is 2.5. Ohio State by 2.5.
I'm fascinated by this game. I can't get a read on either team. But I think SP Plus is going to say Ohio State by like 5 or so, and I think they have like a 2 or 3 point advantage in home field as well. I guess I lean in that direction, but I'm not betting on this game. Like I love that Ohio State and Texas are playing. I love that Clemson and LSU are playing in the first week, because those are 4 teams that I just need to see before I trust any impression I have.
Do you think there is a learnable pattern in data, Bill, from I don't even know if this is true, if Ryan Day or Steve Sarkisian is like, let's imagine I told you their records over the last 15 years. Is one of them a slow starting team? Like, do you believe in non-stationarity during the season? And is one of them predictable in some way that might move the odds a little bit?
Yeah, it's so hard with, because the seasons are short and context is heavy. And like Ohio State was terrible at the end of 2023, but part of that was because the stakes, they missed the playoff, and then their quarterback didn't play against Missouri in the Cotton Bowl and blah, blah, blah. Like, it's really hard to... Like Brian Kelly, always slow starting at LSU. Is there a cause to that, or is that just complete randomness because he did it like 3 times? So I never get very far. There might be a signal somewhere in there, but I've never found it. I've never
of those 4 teams you named, the least
Yeah.
proven quarterback is Ohio State,
Yep.
and that's a redshirt freshman, and you'd expect. I mean,
Right.
Arch is just a redshirt sophomore, right? But Nussmeier and Klubnik,
Right.
they're not going to change that much over the course of the season. Manning will change some, and then Julian Sayin
Yeah.
probably going to change a fair bit over the course of the season. Now, Longhorns are happy to catch Ohio State week 1 for exactly that.
Yeah, and Sayin was almost as highly touted as Arch. Really, really highly touted quarterback. But yeah, we just haven't seen anything from him. And Arch, we got this. Well, first of all, Arch came out and had like the best small sample performance of all time against UTSA last year with like 2 long touchdown passes and a long touchdown run, and was unbelievable. And then got baited into mistakes by Louisiana Monroe the next week. So, I get that people are kind of assuming that he's going to carry them and be number 1, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if it happened, but the bar is really high. I went back and looked. I'm going to either write about this or just stick it in my week 1 preview, but the only person who's ever been a betting favorite for the Heisman Trophy with a smaller resume than Arch Manning was Tua after he threw the touchdown pass to win the national title the year before. And that's it. Like, that's the only, he has 900 career passing yards and he's the Heisman favorite. It's pretty wild, and it's kind of unfounded territory here.
Well, it's going to be fun. We'll learn a lot soon. All right. Give us something that you think the consensus, that's it for the lightning round, not so lightning round. What is one thing you think consensus is getting wrong about college football in 2025? This season. Where are you contrarian, Bill?
Well, I mean, I'm obviously a Clemson contrarian. Like, I do think that's something, I Clemson fans have been on me all off season about it. Like, I think you guys are the ACC favorite. I think you're going to be good. I just don't understand how, and it was weird too. We used to have these bowl bumps where like Geno Smith would throw for 500 yards in the Orange Bowl, and then they'd be like a top 5 team the next year because of it. Cade Klubnik, like, they were a 2 touchdown underdog against Texas in the college football playoff last year. They lost by 2 touchdowns, but he completed like 3 long passes in the process. And they're like, oh, that's it. They're going to have a lead offense again next year. And they might, but Clemson doesn't, it's such a conservative offense. I need to see him, if he throws downfield twice in the first quarter against LSU, I'm much closer to being in. I need to see that Dabo's actually going to let him wing the ball around like he had to, because they were trailing against Texas as well. So they had to throw the ball downfield.
Yeah. Okay, but I got to ask you one question. Klubnik or Nussmeier? If you had to take one, who would you want as your QB? I'm going Klubnik. I didn't see it. I didn't see enough of either one.
He might be the better quarterback. I like LSU's offensive structure more. Like, that will produce big plays, and I don't trust the Clemson's well, but I guess Klubnik.
Of course. Yeah. All right. Listen, we got to let you go. That's a long run with you, and we'll talk with you later in the season. But thanks for the time, Bill. Wish you the best getting the season off. You said at the top of the show that you only in the last day or 2 felt ready for it. So congrats on that, and enjoy the last 2.5 weeks as we run into this thing, and we'll talk with you down the road. Bill Connelly, creator of SP Plus, writer at ESPN, originally with the Football Outsiders, and author of a new book. He's got other books, and they're worthy, but there's a brand new one coming out, Forward Progress. Pre-order now. Welcome back to Wharton Moneyball. Welcome to the second half of this week's show. The first half was more than a half, so the second half's going to be a little bit less of one, but it's our college football preview show of sorts, with some tennis thrown in for good measure. And we've got other sports to talk about now. They are going on. It's not all eclipsed by football. And we'll have a chance to talk more about football over the next couple of weeks. We've got, I think, Stephen Godfrey coming in, do more college football next week. We'll do a pro football preview with Brian Burke in a couple of weeks. So it's on our mind, and now it's increasingly on our screens. We'll come back to it. In the meantime, gentlemen, we got some baseball. Before we get baseball, golf is winding up their season. They're trying to figure out how to make it more dramatic. They've got 3 tournaments here at the end. They whittle the field from top 75, play the first tournament, then the top 50, then finally the top 30. And we had a dramatic, fun Justin Rose victory in the first of these 3 tournaments. How old are they? 43-year-old?
I think it's
Justin
45.
Rose?
I know 45? He's 44 or 45.
All right.
And yeah, I mean,
got to pull for that guy always.
Yeah, I mean, he's been playing extremely well lately. And, I think that's the nice thing about golf. Will Justin Rose compete and be at the top every week. No, but guys can get locked in at golf for short periods of time, and he looks incredibly fit. He's, it's usually the putter that lets you down at that age. The guy's putting well. And, this is a big tournament to win. You guys may remember the year that Tiger won the last tournament, won the FedEx playoffs. Actually, Justin Rose won the overall playoffs, but Tiger won the last event of the season, which was the top 30 championship that Cade talks about. So Justin Rose, first of all, he's going to play well at the Ryder Cup. You know that for a fact. So he's clearly geared up for the end of the season. I thought it was an exciting win. I thought the other thing that was interesting is, all of a sudden this guy that won the U.S. Open, who I had never really heard of, was it J.J. Spawn or whatever? Mm-hmm. He was the one that he beat in the playoff. Like, this guy's coming in top 5, top 10, like at every tournament right now. And this backs to what Cade has said. The guy's been locked in for like 10 weeks now, and this can make a career. I'm not saying he's in the Hall of Fame yet, but the guy's on tour now for the next 10 years. And, he's probably won, $8 to $10 million in the last 10 weeks. And he's clinched the Ryder Cup spot. If I had told you 10 weeks ago, J.J. Spawn is on the U.S. Ryder Cup team, you're like, who?
Yeah, right.
He's on the Ryder Cup team.
Well, let's hope his regime shift that he's been riding for the last couple of months will continue into September.
And the other thing to mention also, just quickly again, Tommy Fleetwood, second again. And we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. I think this is now, I don't know if it's 9 or 10 second place finishes. This guy's never won on the U.S. Tour. And we're getting to a point where, there is some, you have to call it a carryover effect or something, that even if he's in that final group, his odds are much worse than 1 over N, where N is the number of players. It just has to be psychological at this point. It has to be.
It would be realistic. I mean, it'd be understandable if it is even. By the way, our friend Rufus Peabody, who does a lot of golf analytics and betting, finds that there is a measurable pressure effect, that players play worse in the lead in general. Like, the very best of them don't, but like that's the exception. Everybody else generally plays worse when they're in the lead, which is an interesting observation.
And also, just one last golf thing. Our boy, Mr. Texas, Scotty Scheffler, has not been worse than 8th place in 12 straight tournaments.
I mean, we talk about volatility. We talk about volatility in golf, and when you see a guy who seems immune to it, and immune to it at the top, it's high mean and low volatility. It's just really remarkable. Okay, we've only got a few minutes, and let me put it to you this way. I've been away from the show for a couple of weeks. I've been away from civilization for a couple of weeks. I may not have paid as much attention to baseball as I should. If I need to know just a few things about what's going on in baseball right now, what do you think those few things are?
Well, I've got one kind of interesting observation. I mean, one thing about this season, offense is up. Offense is up, I think, or at least I have one anecdotal evidence that the offense is up. We have not yet had a no-hitter this year. And usually there's like 4. We've been averaging 4 or 5 of those a season for the last few years. So, like, there's basically offense is up is one thing you can kind of take in, which, is exciting. And we can, obviously talk about what's kind of driving that particular thing. But and the other kind of part of that is that we talked a few weeks ago about the fact that there was 5 players on pace for over 50 home runs this year. They're still all 5 of them on pace for over 50 home runs.
They're still on pace.
Judge is still on pace, even though of injuries. I guess he must be just at 50.
Yes, Judge is still on pace. I mean, Judge has fallen off. He's actually, I think, the one with the lowest, the best, the shortest pace now. Actually, Suarez is. But actually, Judge and Schwarber are still on pace for the same number of home runs this year, even with Judge's recent injuries.
And Raleigh is up to 45 or something
45,
like that?
at least. As of, I didn't see last night, but as of the night before, he was at 45.
Okay.
Yeah, when I calculated out a couple days ago, he was on pace for like 62 home runs.
Oh, my goodness. Go Raleigh. Here we go. Okay, give me, what else do I need to know? What else do I need to know?
To me, the team that has surprised me the most is the Brewers. I mean, I put it in the rundown. Right. They're the only team in baseball, only team above 600, and it's not close. Their record is 74-44. And their preseason was 83.5.
Their expectation preseason
expectation for the preseason. So, I mean, they're probably not. It's not guaranteed. They're targeting 100 easy. That's way above the expectation.
Okay, so hold on. Give me. Let's take it down a level. Like Pythagorean. Let's go, Bill James. What would are they outperforming? Are they outwinning their run performance? Do we know anything about that?
I hadn't looked at that. I saw that the Yankees are the team. I did compute the Yankees are the team has the worst performance on Pythagorean. In other words, they have the number one run differential, for example, in the American League and the 6th best record.
Okay. But going back to the Brewers, I think, I mean, it is surprising probably that they're the best team in baseball. It is not that surprising that they're a good team. I mean, I think I was watching a Brewers game the other night. They mentioned that Christian Yelich, who's been played there for like 8 years now, they've gone to the playoffs 7 out of the 8 years he's been there.
That's impressive.
That's pretty amazing for any baseball team. I mean, other than maybe some of the ones that are kind of in there, usually that's amazing for any kind of mid-payroll, like kind of mid-market baseball team, I think. And so I think it really, to the extent that there's something systematic going on in Milwaukee with especially on the pitching side. They seem to be able to produce out of their development system both relief and starters, like just ace after ace, like elite closer after elite closer. So and they've done it, over many kind of runs now. So I think whoever's in charge of pitching there, hopefully makes
doing something right. Shane, a few weeks ago now, we were talking about the Brewers, and you were like, yeah, I'm not going to buy any Central Division team in either league until I see something else. Is it different for you now?
No. Well, no, I mean, that's one thing. I mean, 7 out of the 8 years that 7 out of the last 8 years they've made the playoffs. Have you heard of them in the World Series?
Yeah, no.
By the way, Cade,
have you heard of them even did they make the conference? I mean, they're kind of 7 out of the 8. They're always in the playoffs, but they've been kind of pretty consistently one and done.
I'm here to deliver stats for you live, Cade, by the way. The Brewers' Pythagorean win percentage, 0.629. Their actual win percentage, 0.627.
Look at that. So it's not that they're outperforming their run differential. Wow.
Right there. Okay. They're matching.
That's a mark of a truly elite team that they hit their Pythagorean average right on. No, I mean, that it is interesting because, it's kind of like, I think on paper, like, just in terms of player, like probably the preseason rankings that do the kind of sum of the war, the play, that try and build up teams from their component parts, probably constantly underestimate the Brewers because there seems to be all these new guys always coming out of the system to fill in the losses. The
other thing that caught my eye, asked us to say one other thing, Cade, about baseball. The Dodgers right now have the 4th best record in the National League, yet they're by far still the betting favorite for the National League to go to the World Series. So that to me is just interesting. And, you've always talked about how much weight do we put on priors and when do we start, when do priors start to have less and less weight? It has to be prior related because there's nothing right now, there's still 40 games to go roughly. There's nothing right now that suggests that they're better than the Brewers or the Phillies or the Cubs or even possibly the Padres in their own division that would suggest that they should be plus 250 and these other teams are plus 1,000. There's nothing in the data right now.
Yeah, I think that's just name familiarity at this early part of the proceedings with betting. I don't know how much that's a thing, but probably the Yankees are still a higher bet than they otherwise would be.
For sure.
So one, it is interesting, and I mean the expectations were so high coming in, and so I guess that to some extent could make sense. But I'd be curious to push into that deeper and to know what the implied weight is and whether there's any rationale to that. Okay, last question on baseball. Y'all noted somewhere that in the AL, it's Guardians, Yankees, and Red Sox all within a game or two of each other for 2 of the 3 final.
Yep.
So if you had to pick, which team of those 3 would not make the 2 wild card spots? Who do you least believe among those 3? Yankees, Guardians, and Red Sox. Of course, I'm talking to a Yankee and a Red Sox fan, and I'll take the Guardians. I'm always pulling for the Guardians. So who's going to be disappointed here at the end of the year?
I think the Yankees have not played their best baseball in the last 50 games. I think they'll get their act together enough to make one of the wild card spots. I don't know enough about Boston or the Guardians. If I had to say which one would be out, I'd say Boston. But
yeah, I mean, I unfortunately I have to agree with my friend and colleague Eric on this one. I think the Yankees are the ones most likely to kind of make a run just because they've been playing so horribly to get into that like wild card position. I mean, they were like 6-7 games up on the division not that long ago. So they're kind of, I guess, due for a little bit of a regression back up to their standard. And that's bad news for the Reds. That's bad news for another division team that has to play them a lot still to come.
Okay.
And, so I think, it's going to be very hard for 2 out of those 3 teams to come out this. It happened last year that two central teams both made the wild card. But
but talk about a good parsimonious answer. So you got to take one out of the one division and take the team that's not playing the other 2. That's very, very good, Shane. Okay, guys, why don't we wrap it there? Call it a week. We'll come back and do this again next time. For the whole team here, Eric Bradlow, my colleague, collaborator, longtime co-host, Shane Jensen, same thing. Adi Wyner in absentia. For Deion Simpkins, the boss man, Dee Patel, running this show for the hire. She's a big executive running things from behind the scenes. Dee, we depend on Dee and Deion. Many thanks to those guys. Many thanks to y'all for listening. Come back and join us next time. Between now and then, enjoy your sports.